All right, so section 6.7 is called solving basic radical equations. So they do say basic, meaning these are the easier ones. That means that most likely section 6.8 is solving radical equations that aren't so basic, right? Maybe a little more difficult, a little bit harder to do. So we'll do that on Monday. But for today, we're doing the basic radical equations. Now, I put right there, recall that in order to get rid of a square root, we need to square it, right? We need to raise it to a second power. So if I have the square root of x and I want to remove the square root, then what I'm going to do is square it. When you do that, it gets rid of the square root, and the only thing that's left is the radicand. The only thing that's left over after that is the thing inside the radical. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's just a monomial. It can be a binomial, trinomial on the inside. So right here we have a binomial as a radicand in that radical. If I square it, though, the result will just be 2 minus y. Okay, so that's just me telling you, here's the step that you're going to use every single time to solve. Okay, because every one of these problems is going to have radicals. Okay, now when we're solving for radicals, there's one thing you want to try to remember is always make sure that the radical has been left by itself on either the left or the right side. It doesn't matter which side. But you're going to leave it by itself, okay? There should be nothing multiplying it, nothing dividing it, nothing like that, okay? So there's one other things that they say right here, extraneous solutions. These are answers that basically make the problem fail, okay? So what do I mean by that? So if we look at the square root of 2 minus y, if I were to tell you that the answer for y was 5, okay, in this one right here, if I were to say, look, we got the square root of 2 minus y, and I ended up solving, and I found out that y equals 5 is my solution when I solve some kind of equation. If I plug it back in, 2 minus 5, that's negative 3. Can I have a negative inside of a square root? No, so that means that's an extraneous solution. It doesn't work. So the only bad side about today's lesson and Monday's lesson is you have to check to make sure that your answer makes sense. Okay? You do have to check to make sure that the answer makes sense. So we'll kind of work on that as we do the lesson, okay? Let me erase this part right here. So solving and checking for extraneous solutions, again, we are going to have to check for, okay? So example number 1, it's it's not too hard, right? 8 equals to the square root of 4p. They just want us to solve. Again, we will check our answers after. Remember what I told you. Look at your radical. So here's my radical. There's nothing in front of the radical that's multiplying it. There's nothing underneath it that's dividing it. So, and there's no like plus 7 on the outside, right? Nothing like that. Okay, it's by itself. That's what I want. Once it looks like that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to square both sides. Okay, so I'm automatically going to just do a square. Now 8 squared, that's 64. And the square root of 4p squared is just 4p. So in order to solve, I just divide both sides by 4. So p is equal to 16. Okay, and that's it. Again, now the problems might get harder in the sense that maybe there's a couple more steps I got to do after I square everything, or maybe to clean it up a bit. But other than that, this is basically it. Okay, so square both sides, solve. Okay, now they are going to want us to check it. So in other words, plug in the number into your equation. So the check step right here is basically 8 is equal to the square root of 4 times 16. Well, 4 times 16, that's 64, and I know the square root of 64 is 8, so that works, right? So it's not an extraneous solution, it's an actual answer. If it would have said like 10 equals to 8, then that's extraneous, okay? So we don't count that as a solution. So do you have to do the check step? Yes. Do you have to write it down? No, you can kind of do it in your head if you want. That's fine. Just check it, make sure, okay? So here's another one. The square root of p over 2 is equal to 5. Again, there's nothing dividing the radical, right? Like there's no number down there. There's no number in front of it that's multiplying it, right? There's no number adding or subtracting to the radical on the left side. So it is simplified. So I'm just going to square both sides. So square both sides here and here. I get p over 2 equals to 25. Now to solve for p, I'm just going to multiply it. Okay, the 2 times 25, p is equal to 50. And I'm done. Okay, of course, they want a check step. So I'm just going to check it real quick. If p is 50, this is the square root of 50 over 2, supposedly equal to 5. Well, 50 divided by 2 is 25, and the square root of 25 is 5. So it checks. So we're good. Again, you could do that in your head. You don't have to write it out. Okay? I used to hate it when my teacher used to tell me, like, I don't care. You have to do all the work. You have to write it. Because it was just more work. I didn't need to. I could have done it in my head. Not a big deal. All right, example number 3. Now notice this is starting to get a little bit more, I guess, filled with numbers and variables, but still, notice the square root is not being divided by anything. The square root is not being multiplied by anything. The square root's not being added by anything. Now you might say, yeah, it is. There's a plus 10. Yeah, but that's inside the square root. I'm talking about outside the square root. Nothing is affecting it. It's just the square root of 9a plus 10 all by itself. Okay? Once it looks like that, I'm just going to immediately square both sides. I want to get rid of that square root. Okay? So this is going to leave me with 9a plus 10 equals to 64. Now I'll move this 10 over to this side, so that's 9a is equal to 54. And if I divide both sides by 9, I get that a is equal to 6. So all I have to do now is check it, right? Now, of course, I'm doing the check step, but again, you don't have to. So I have, if a is 6, 9 times 6, that's going to be placed there, plus 10 equals to 8. Well, 9 times 6 is 54, plus 10, supposedly that's equal to 8, and that's the square root of 64, and we do know that the square root of 64 is 8, so 8 equals 8, so we're good. It works. Again, the check step's not meant to be crazy difficult. It's just, it's supposed to be simple. But again, you can do it in your head. So don't worry about writing it out if you don't want to. We got 2 more of these. I'm just trying to show you all the different ways they're going to throw stuff at you. So, because honestly, after showing you 2 of them, that should have been more than enough. But I want you to see some different looks. So this one has square roots on both sides. Okay? They are simplified already. The square root's all by itself on the left. It's all by itself on the right. Okay. But it does have square roots on both sides. So I'm just going to square both sides like I've been doing. So square this side, square that side. So I get negative 7 minus x equals to negative 16 minus 2x. Okay. Now I'm going to have to do some algebra, right? I got to start combining my terms that are the same. So I'm going to get this negative 2x. I'm going to move it over. So I have negative 7. Negative x plus 2x is a positive x equal to negative 16. And I'm going to move this negative 7 over to that side. So that means x is equal to negative 16 plus 7 is a negative 9. And we're done. I don't know why, but when you opened that door, my brain immediately went to GTA 5. I heard the cops, and I'm like, what did they do? Right? Somebody did something. So, are we good with that one? So, square both sides. Then you have variables on both sides. You're going to combine them and solve, okay? Now, again, you're supposed to check it, so you can do it in your head or not. I'm just going to kind of show it to you guys here. So it's going to be the square root of negative 7 minus negative 9. Okay, so notice it is a minus x, so minus a negative 9. And then that's equal to the square root of negative 16 minus 2 times negative 9. Well, negative 7 minus a negative 9 is 2. So that's the square root of 2 equals to, this is the negative 16 plus 18. So the square root of 2 equals to the square root of 2. That's true. So that means his answer is good. Again, if one of these fails, then we say it's extraneous. Most of these are going to work, okay? If not all of them are going to work. But there are some rare occasions where answers don't make sense. And again, you don't have to show the work. Just do it in your head. That's fine. So here's the last one. This is one where the situation is that there is something influencing the radical, right? Like right here we have a 10 that's adding to the radical. So I got to get rid of that 10. Okay? Once I get rid of that 10, then the radical will be all by itself, and that's good. So I'm going to get this 10 and I'm going to move it over to that side. So it's going to be the square root of 2x plus 100 is equal to 10. Now at this point, I'm going to square both sides because the radical is all by itself. So square this side and square that side. So that's going to give me a 2x plus 100 is equal to 100. I'll move my my 100 on the left side over to the right, but when I do that, I get a 0, which is okay, but it does cancel out. So now just divide both sides by 2. So x is equal to 0. Okay, so supposedly this is my answer. I'm going to check it, and then we're done. Okay, so the check step right here, I have 10 plus the square root of 2 times 0 plus 100 is equal to 20. 10 plus, that's going to be the square root of 100 is equal to 20. The square root of 100 is 10, and 10 plus 10 is 20. So I get that 20 equals 20. So again, that's good. Okay. So yeah, you do have to check these. No, you don't have to write it out. You can do it in your head. But you should always check. Anything that you solve with square roots should always be checked, because you never know if the answer is going to end up with negative solutions inside. So you got to be careful with that. But this is what this lesson is like. Like I said, it's more difficult than the stuff we've done in the past 2 days. But I mean, is it really that much more difficult? You got to do a little bit more writing, as opposed to yesterday was basically just clicking on buttons, right? So it is a little bit more difficult, but I don't think it's going to be like, anxieties rising or anything like that. I think it's okay. Nothing too bad. So, all right, let me go ahead and stop this here. I'll give you guys your homework so you guys can work on it.